Shalom, good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in New York State in 1981. Now celebrating our 40. Well, what are we celebrating? Let me see what's written here. Now celebrating our 44th year. Today is Wednesday, December 24th, 2025 in the Gregorian calendar. And since it is after nightfall, it is the onset of the fifth day of the 10th Israelite Hebrew month of Tevet in the Hebrew Israelite calendar, year 5786. Happy, there also, almost every religion and ethnic group has some sort of festival of lights at this time of the year, going back to ancient times. We just had the eight nights of Hanukkah. The Hindus have Diwali Day, that's their festival of lights. Christians have Christmas to New Year's, and the Tannenbaum, the Christmas tree, predates Christianity. The ancient tribes also had their festivals of light. And in Jewish tradition, we believe that all the festivals of light of all the world's cultures and religions go back to Adam and Eve. The days were getting shorter. I have three rabbinical experts here that can tell me if I got it right. And Adam saw, oh, the world's going to be destroyed. Then they started getting longer. So he had the first festival of light, he and his Eshet Chayil, his better half, Eve. And since then, this festival of lights. So whatever your religion or ethnic group is, happy festival of lights, whoever you are, wherever you are, the days are starting to get longer. Now, welcome to episode 39 of our monthly Root and Branch Association, Ancient Roots Mothering, Roots, Nettles, and Sage programs with three mighty women of the God of Israel, natural healers, the wisdom of women going back to our first mother Eve, preserved by women like Hildegard of Bingen all over the world for centuries, coming down through the centuries, and from, as what's especially important today, a Torah-based perspective. And that's what Gila Weiss and Chava Dagan and Rivka Aslan offer you. Chava is speaking to us from the Southwest Negev, where she has a family farm and raises bees with her husband and gazillions of children. And Rivka is from the Lower Galilee here in Eretz Yisrael, and Gila Weiss is from Florida, where you have a seemingly rational governor and a Surgeon General, what's his name? The black guy. He's fantastic. Lapato, the one who says, don't take the inject, someone talking sanity. So it seems like at the moment, Florida's little oasis of sanity in the general craziness. Looking at your governor, what is his name? Joseph Lapato? Okay, got it right. My brain is still working. At my age, you need a systems check. I'm almost 70 terrestrial human years old. So now, without further ado, let me hand over the mic to these three lovely ladies for another healing session. I mean, the world is such an emergency room. It's getting kookier every day. It's the best of times and it's the worst of times, like Charles Dickens said in Tale of Two Cities about the French Revolution. It's getting better at the same time it's getting worse, and everything's speeding up all over the world. And so I am speaking to you from the Hill of the Priests here in Jerusalem, overlooking Mount Moriah, where we know that very soon the third and final Israelite Temple of Jerusalem will soon be under reconstruction and stand forever. As per the prophet Ezekiel, please see the biblical book of Ezekiel, chapters 40 to 48. Now into some heavy duty natural healing. Ladies, it's all yours. I'm going up to the gallery.
Thank you, little Aria. And it was nice meeting your granddaughters that are so beautiful. So we'll say hi to them for the beginning of the show. Look what I have. Today we're going to be talking about fire. And I think Lowell said it best. He gave the perfect intro because this is the season of fire, and every nation and humanity is acknowledging kind of what's going on, which is basically the winter solstice. So the days going all the way down to the shortest day and then starting to open up again to longer days. So we want to just kind of bounce it around and talk about some of the different ways that fire can bring healing. Um, and we can bring it into our lives for peace and for comfort and for warmth, while also respecting its destructive power. So, ladies, take it away.
Okay, so I'll just start. So like you said, the world is borer. It's on fire. It feels like it's on fire. There's so much terrorism and war, and we all know the big mess. Um, so sometimes when it feels just too much and too big and too overwhelming, we have to bring it back down and simplify it and make it real to ourselves, find our place again, find our grounding again, um, and reconnect with what's really truly important. Is it all this political mess, or is it really what's going on in our bodies, our families? So we kind of took this idea of fire, where the world is kind of standing right now, and what do? We fight fire with fire. That's a famous saying, and it really did come from somewhere. So if you just imagine or go outside and do it yourself, lighting a fire, sitting around a bonfire. Gila will talk about her women fire circles. People congregating around a fire, whether it's a fireplace, a bonfire outside, sitting and looking into the fire and letting that fire, it just emanates a massive good energy vibe without adding anything. You can add, like we'll talk about later, different herbs, but just the essence of the fire and sitting in front of it and just getting into that vibe, just letting it overwhelm you. Sitting, what naturally happens around a fire? Stories start coming out, singing, drums, maybe some dancing. But even if it's just really low key, and even we sleep outside, we'll have a bonfire and just all gather around the fire. Just that idea, if you think about a crackling fire and the flames, the orange, the yellow, it's so mesmerizing and so calming. And it brings such an amazing feeling and takes away the stress, which is really what we all need to do right now, right? So I'm just opening it up with that. Gila, you want to continue? You're muted.
I'm going to continue in the exact same vein as you and Rivka started out. I'm just going to continue that fire is such a huge part, has always been such a huge part of our lives, dating back thousands of years across the globe, no matter the culture people are from, the place, the culture. And fire is neither negative nor positive, but it can be used destructively and it can be used constructively, even dating back to our Torah. And I just love always looking things up and validating our own Masorah. Going back, fire has many mentions in our Torah. And I was reading and absolutely loved to read how Rashi goes into such great detail. Rashi is one of our commentaries, one of the main commentaries on our Torah. And he goes into great detail about how fire was used and how they used it to build the Mishkan with the silver and the gold and all kinds of things. And it's just another validation of its constructive use. And even in Judaism, we light candles. We light candles to bring in the Sabbath, the flame. On Hanukkah, Chabad has the custom of, after you light, to sit, especially the women, to sit for half an hour just to gaze into those flames and to do nothing. It's it has a very meditative vibe, a very meditative energy. It's the spark. The spark is associated with our inner divine spark. So there are all these amazing, connections to our Masorah, to, the the destruction and the renewal, and if across cultures, destructive and renewal. And one of the things I love, I will talk next, not now, about women's circles, but just as a mom, you know, going outside and making a fire with your kids, have family bonfire night, roast marshmallows, make s'mores, roast potatoes. Everyone bring a drum or nothing, just gaze at that fire. I'm so blessed to be part of a homeschooling community, a Jewish homeschooling community, and a co-op, and we do bonfire night. And seeing the kids build that fire, the focus, the creativity, the earth-based and nature-based creativity and construction, and seeing the kids sit around the fire at some point, and the calmness that you literally witness, that emotional regulation is just, you can't not see it and feel it. And everyone is happier. If you drum around the fire, you know, I might be, you might be, somebody might be a little bit more of an introvert, but the fire brings out that passion. It brings out that creativity and that connection and that bonding. And so fire has so many positive things, you know, that it can bring with it. Again, renewal and constructive. Too much can burn, too little is cold and stagnating. And somewhere in the middle there, metaphorically and raw and real in life, there is a balance. So, Rivka, if you want to start the next round, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll invite everyone to do what I'm doing and hold a candle for the rest of our talk because it really is, you know, the ladies just talked about the calming meditative effect, and I'm definitely feeling it. I have two candles here, one at a distance and one that I'm really in, you know, in touch with. And I would just suggest playing around with that to see how it changes your mood because it definitely changes mine and many other people's, as Gila was just saying. Um, yeah, so about the kids and getting them in the earth, and you know, in order to start a fire, you need to create a place, a fireplace. And so I think Chava's going to talk a bit about what she's doing in her house soon, but what we did just recently, and it wasn't planned out, but it just so happens that right in the season of, you know, for us it was during Hanukkah, when we're lighting all these fires and we're acknowledging, we bring in all the holidays and Shabbat with fire, right? That's one of the women's three mitzvot. But the fact that my kids were really gravitating towards creating this fire pit, and so they created this Dakota smokeless fire pit, which basically is two holes, and you have a tunnel from one smaller hole into the larger hole at the bottom of the larger hole, which feeds in oxygen to the bottom of the fire. And yeah, just taking clippings from around the yard and old dried out, excuse me, branches and things like that from the trees that just snap off and starting your fire like that. Um, but the process is not only the fire itself, but creating a space for the fire is its own kind of unique meditation, which can be as involved as you want it to be. It can be as simple as finding a place to set your candle. It can be digging a hole in the earth, or it can be doing what Chava's going to talk about right now, what she's done in her house.
Okay. We're just referring to my Rumford, you can look it up, Rumford fireplace. We made a hole in the wall, and then you fill up the walls with fire bricks, and it's just a hole in the wall, and it's shaped like sort of a triangle so that it emanates the heat into the house. Just even a small fire, all of it is pushed into the house. There's no grate, there's no doors, there's nothing between us and the fire, and there's something so healing in that. It's just like we can light a fire in our house. The kids love it, and it's just crackling and burning, and someone's always responsible for the fire, making sure it's going, making sure it didn't come out of its little spot so that it doesn't make smoke in the house at all. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. But we also have like 15 bonfire pits outside, one in the front, one in the back, one by our tent, one over here, one over there. Because wherever we are, if we're hanging out with the animals or in our big tent where we sleep, there's always a reason to light up a fire. And so we're ready with our little bonfire pits. And one analogy that I love with this fire is if you think of one candle and each person is that candle or that spark. So we hold our spot in the darkness and we create whatever it is that we can create. But then another one comes and stands next to us, and another, and another. And pretty soon we're not just one little, maybe insignificant light and heat and warmth. Now we are a blazing bonfire together. And so, meaning that if we all come together and we all provide our, mission in the world and our spark of light and whatever, and we do it together, we are so strong. And all of these analogies is so beautiful with fire and candles and light. Of course, there's always Lag BaOmer. Don't forget Lag BaOmer, our big, great bonfire. So many of our holidays are built around this. It's always just so inspiring. And yeah, that light to darkness is powerful.
I absolutely love that you have that fireplace, that hole in the wall. It's absolutely awesome. And like I said, I want to see photos of that in action. Um, Kids are just naturally drawn to fire, and there's nothing that they love better than they will ask. Like even my older kids, my younger, everyone is, can we have fire night? Can we have bonfire? I live in a typical South Florida suburb. What we did was we repurposed our old sandbox. It's made of wood, but it's full of sand. And we positioned bricks around, and we have like an old metal, I don't know what to call it. And we just put that down, and we took some old um, terracotta roof tiles and put those around so that, there's no exposed wood. And we have this awesome, aesthetically pleasant-ish looking fire pit or spot. And I think that's also part of it, is like making that fireplace or that fire pit. And, it already becomes a place where you look at and you are drawn to it. Um, you were talking about like the smell of the fire, and we can't escape that. Every person has a muscle limbic real life memory of that campfire smell. And it is something that is so primal. As humans, we are all drawn to that smell. It is a form of aromatherapy. And yes, we can enhance our fires depending what woods we use as well, with herbs, with aroma herbs, with specific barks that have aroma. One of the wood that I like to add a little piece toward the end is sorry. One of the things I like to add towards the end are just dried herbs, whatever herbs you have, whether they're in your fridge. And I'm sure Chava and Rivka will have their own favorites, whether you have, thyme or sage or rosemary. You can always add some of that to the coals, to the embers, and get an awesome, awesome aroma. I like to add a little piece of Palo Santo wood. I have a collection of Palo Santo, and I just, to me, that is, everyone has their smell, and that aroma just hits the spot with us. We love it, love it. And, when we talk about these aromas and the listening and the meditative effect of looking at a fire, fire is actually considered one of the 4 or 5 elements, depending which school of thought you ascribe to, or more. There might be more elements, but I would say it's one of the 5 elements, earth, wind, water, fire, and then soul, mind, body, soul. So fire, it actually has a frequency of its own. It has been measured. So that crackling you hear, that sound, is a recognized sound on the solfeggio scale, and it is at exactly 528 hertz. It is associated that frequency sound is often associated with the heart. And I think it's Chinese medicine which associates fire with the heart or the solar plexus. So we have all these healing different frequencies and modalities going on without even realizing. But when we look it up, we can validate these things. And I think it's so empowering. And for those of you who are specifically looking for a physical mind body type healing, sitting around a bonfire and roasting whatever it is, will be doing that while you're just sitting there enjoying.
Gila, would you like to talk about the Women's Fire Circle? I think now's a good
Yeah.
time.
Okay. So essentially, I started something. Anybody who knows the area that I live in, South Florida, has a large Jewish community. And in our community, we have a lot of people who practitioners, people who practice different healing modalities and natural modalities. And we have literally every week you can see a flyer for a cacao ceremony or a breathwork ceremony or this type of something. And it's absolutely awesome that our Jewish community is finally, connecting with our inner healing modalities and fire that spark within. At the same time, I had this feeling of this void of just connecting with our sister friends, connecting with our friends, just like at a campfire. We like to sit around. We do these, bonfire, these kumsits once a month at the co-op. And I wanted to do this with friends. And so I, started invite, keep it small. Nobody pays. I'm not practitioner anything. It's about connecting, sitting around the fire. I tell everyone, they ask, what can I bring? Bring yourself. Bring a funny story to share. Bring a hum that you like humming. Bring a nigun. Bring a song. Bring a drum. Bring anything you want. I have a friend who brings cacao. She makes us all cacao, and we sit, and usually what starts out as, drumming, humming, drinking cacao, we roast marshmallows, we connect to the inner child or just that inner part of us. That bonding and that opening up of those of us who are either introvert or just, came to be part of something often reveals where we share things. We share things with each other and we bond. And I always state at the beginning that we are friends, we are women, we are connected through all of our cycles. And this is a way that we can connect to our ancestors and to our inner selves in a very real, non-stress way. And we hold space for each other. We literally hold space. If somebody shares something emotional, we can hold them. We can hold their hand. We can each go around and say an affirming, positive, loving word or thought or hug. And it is such a closeness and a bonding that I don't think we would get without the fire. The fire is the focus. The fire, there are moments of just everybody quiet or staring into the fire or leaning back and closing our eyes. And it's part of that is the fire. There is no stress. You don't have to breathe a certain way. You don't have to drink a certain way. You don't have to listen to me or anyone. We're all there for each other to share in this beautiful experience. And that's really the little, the small, the big, the everything of it.
Okay, we're gonna all start these now. Every neighborhood
Yes.
being called to start. I love
Yes.
this. I just love it.
Yeah. What's not to love? You can do what, it's just an opening of the heart. And that's really, really where it is.
And
Do
you
it with
think
your
about
kids.
you think about everyone as being sort of corralled into, apartments and high rises and these kind of things so that they have less access to something like that. So yalla, everyone get down, go down to the ground zero and have a community bonfire with your apartment building. We all need it. We all
Yeah.
need okay. Rivka, you wanna
Yeah, there's some we talked a bit about foods and the bonfires and the s'mores and the toasted marshmallows, and those also have a special smell that are uniquely associated with fire. Like you need a fire to toast your marshmallows, at least properly. You need a fire. Um, I don't include like the people who zap their marshmallows in the microwave for a few seconds. That doesn't count as a roasted marshmallow. But yeah, so I was thinking about some drinks as well. Um, this is like the time, the flu season. We're hearing about all these things going around, but this is like the time of hot toddies, a fire cider. So fire cider, for anyone who doesn't know, is a drink. It's not really a drink. It's more of like an aperitif, like a little shot. I don't know. You can use it on your salad. You don't have to actually drink it. But basically, it's a jar that you fill with I guess the base menstruum would be like an apple cider vinegar. And then you use all sorts of different very spicy herbs and food herbs to kind of, I guess, macerate in the apple cider vinegar, for a while. And you kind of get this, and typically people will add a bit of honey. So it's like this sweet and spicy and a tart. Um, Drink that you can take by the spoonful or have a little shot glass if you're not feeling well, or you can add it, marinate foods in it or put it on your salads. But it's got these super like flu busting herbs in it and cold busting herbs and can really boost your immunity for this season. So it's called fire cider and check it out, look it up, make some of it. It's fun. And you can adjust it to your taste. And there's tons of recipes out there. And part of the fun, just like any kind of like, you know, microbrewery or, beer brewing family or something, is like it's making your own combinations and kind of twisting and changing it around and adding, a little more ginger, a little less, cayenne or whatever it is, and figuring out what you really, really love. Um, so yeah, and the fiery foods as well. Just in general, spices. This is the time of spicy foods that bring up warmth. There's a lot of cold, depending on where you are. I feel in Israel, I can get cold to the bone, especially when I'm in the desert, which Chava can probably talk about. That's her turf. But, it's funny because the desert is, you think of it as being so hot. And it wasn't until I lived there during the winter where I felt the coldest cold that I've ever felt in my life, despite living in 6 months of snow a year growing up. It just really gets into your bones and really, really chills you from the inside. And the only way to kind of address that is from the inside, is to, heat up from the inside. So, like the Russians would bring out their vodka, for example. And you can use alcohol, but you can also use like a fire cider or these spicy, fiery herbs like ginger, and you can make tea and you can mull your wine or apple cider or apple juice. Here I can't get apple cider so easily, so I do a cold brew, which might be interesting to some people as well. Even though we're talking about fire, I'm talking about fiery herbs. So in this case, you can use your clove and your cinnamon stick and anything else you want, star anise or nutmeg or whatever. And you can just put little bits of those herbs into a jug of apple juice or cider if you can access it, and then leave it in the fridge overnight. And the next day it's ready. You have your spiced apple juice, which has that nice warming from the inside. So yeah, just want to bring those things up. Other thoughts, ladies? We could
yeah,
talk about, yeah, go
I
on.
was thinking, first of all, the cayenne. I loved that one. It could be a pinch in your hot chocolate. It could be um, into some olive oil, and then it can be like a liniment just rubbed onto sore muscles or something like that. Mustard also. Mustard is very warming. You said ginger. Um, what else is like warming in the body? Anything? It creates heat inside. You said ginger and all the like pumpkin spice things. What else?
I mean, I just want to add that mustard's growing right now here. So you can go and get that mustard fresh. You don't need to get your Dijon, whatever imported from France in the grocery store. Just go out. It's a wild weed. We have two main species of mustard in the north. And one of them is black mustard. It's got a good spice, but you eat the greens, and the greens have all that mustardy taste. And same with horseradish. That'll also warm from the inside, and that's a
Yeah.
common ingredient in fire cider.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
also you can have the greens from horseradish as well. Gila, you want to share some more warming herbs?
I'm thinking like even foods like onion and garlic. Anything that, helps with circulation, all of those type things. And I mean like herbs like cardamom and, cloves that I think they're also all really warming.
Galangal.
All yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of warming, stimulating herbs. Absolutely. Um, I
Yeah,
love the analogy you gave of the cool and the hot. It's like fire and ice.
Mhm. Yeah. I think I would also caution though that some of these herbs that warm from the inside can be like very expelling. So they can get things moving, meaning you might end up with explosive diarrhea or too much of really, warming from the inside. Herbs are also typically associated with preterm miscarriage. So if you're in one of those kind of situations, just make sure that these herbs that we're talking about aren't contraindicated for where you are in your life. Um,
And when you have like a fever or something, as they help you to sweat it out, like they heat you from the inside and push it out through your sweat glands, and that just brings a fever right down.
I love that. Yes, I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
well,
Hmm.
now that you brought up the fever herbs, we can't go another moment without mentioning yarrow, you
Yes, I
know.
knew you were gonna say
So,
that.
but
Love it.
yarrow's not, I wouldn't necessarily call yarrow warming. I mean, I'm sure it is to some extent, but not like the herbs we're talking about, like cinnamon and clove. And like those are really like ginger, but yarrow is great for really bringing up and out the fever. And the same with elderflowers for children. I would reach for that for children before I would yarrow. It's just gentler. But also wouldn't consider those warming herbs, but they're in fact, even the flowers, the elder flowers, I would consider to be cooling. But for some reason they can help bring out the fever while also kind of cooling it. But they like let it run its course instead of it's like temping it down, um, which is good. So those are some fun herbs to think about. Um,
Eh,
I think also I'd love to talk about I'd love to talk about Gila if you'd like to talk about Ring of Fire and some of the birth issues because we have a rebirth of the sun at this time too. So
Right,
that's also a common theme.
right. Absolutely. So when I think of fire and I want to have an analogy to birth, it's huge. Any woman who has given birth naturally can remember that moment that is actually coined. It's a term that is coined as the baby's crown. It's called the Ring of Fire. And we have on our planet an area surrounding the Pacific that is called the Ring of Fire.
Hi, Jojo.
Hi.
Hi,
Hey,
Jojo.
Jojo. He had to make an appearance.
What a sweetie.
Hi.
Hello.
So anyway, so when I think of on the map, when I think of these areas on the map that surround that ring of fire, which is called the ring of fire because there are earthquakes, but mostly there's volcanoes. And there is volcanic activity all the time in one place or another. And the volcano is another analogy to birth because you get this absolutely intense burst of fire, and it is transformative, and it is renewal, it is rebirth. And so, because what you get that lava, you get that fire, you go back to that place years later, and you will have the most lush, the most fertile soil, lush forests, and green. So it truly is. It isn't as in birth, which is really short and intense. This is longer, but it's the same thing. So during birth, women go through labor. And when they get to a point that we call transition, where you're transitioning from your labor to birth, you go through this very intense process as the baby crowns, like I said, called the Ring of Fire. And it is very intense. It's almost like an out-of-body experience. It's an altered consciousness experience. It truly is, for many women who can express it afterwards, who are in a environment conducive to that. And essentially, it is very short-lived. And from that very intense ring of fire emerges life. And mom literally is transformed, and it is a rebirth. And you give birth to life. You have this soul that has now entered into your life in the form of a baby. So the analogy of fire is used so often in so many cultures as renewal, transformative, and rebirth. And as women, we get to actually embody this and experience this in the very real and raw sense of that ring of fire.
On the
I
same,
Yeah.
go ahead. On the same vein, when I was a kid, there was a forest fire out where my parents were living. And this is, of course, back before, things were done intentionally. It was an actual mistake, whatever, of a forest fire. And it was destructive. I mean, the whole forest burned down. But then the forest reforestation people, whatever they're called, they came in and they said, sometimes this is just part of the cycle, and there are only seeds that can regerminate and sprout in face of fire. Otherwise, they will sit in the ground and they will do nothing for hundreds of years until there's a fire, and then there's a new tree. I mean, that's like incredible. It's the same idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Rebirth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add about the elders here, and it isn't only for women, but in ancient societies, through the night, there was a large bonfire that was kept going to frighten away animals, for protection, for warmth, for safety. And it was very common in ancient societies for the elders, the grandparents, to be tending the fire in the night. For obvious reasons, the mothers are nursing their babies, they're dealing with the young kids, that was something that the elders it's not could contribute. Their contributions were desperately needed in order to keep society functioning, I guess is a more accurate way to put it. And I was just thinking about the fire keeping of the elders, and herbalist Susan Weed says that in menopause, again, the elders are men and women, but Susan Weed would say that when a woman is going through menopause and she's having difficulty with sleeping, which is a common issue, facet of menopause, she says that it could be that you're preparing yourself for that service as an elder, where you guard the entire community through the night. That's like an ancient in your DNA kind of thing. And I was also thinking about another aspect of the elders, of the women, and that is a mother-in-law. That the word for mother-in-law in Hebrew is chama, which actually means the sun. It's another word for sun, for shemesh, is chama. But if something is cham, and of course chama is the feminine of cham, it means warm. So the idea of a mother-in-law being a chama, it's like she can either be burning up, destructive, overbearing, there's like the sun. There is nothing that tops it. Like it dominates the day, which is not the kind of mother-in-law most of us want. Or she could be that warmth, the chama of warmth, like this kind of warmth. It's that kind of, even the fire space that you would go to, like Gila said, where you could sit around and really talk and be vulnerable and share and have someone hold space for you. And in that word chama, it shows, for those of us who can be mother-in-laws, and I'm not excluding father-in-laws, like, definitely take note here too, but we have those two directions that we could go in, and there's the potential for either, and choose wisely, I guess.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for that. We need to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Another thing, I guess, that I wanted to mention was I recently connected with my Aunt Wendy after 30 years of not having her in my life. And one of the really special things that her and her husband do, is they have a fire pit, and they begin every morning at their fire pit outside. So they go and they have breakfast, and it's like, unless it's like a storming rain or something, but in snow, in the summer, in the
Amazing.
winter, in the spring and the fall, they start their day around a fire, having breakfast, talking and connecting. And that they said that was one of the favorite parts of their day, and they extend it sometimes all the way through to lunch, because they're both retired now. But they were talking about how wonderful it is that when they invite guests, like a lot of us will invite guests for dinner or in the evening or whatever, and they say, no, we invite them for fire pit in the morning, and nobody ever wants to leave. They end up spending the whole day at the house because, they're like, oh yeah, come over at 9 a.m. to the fire pit. We'll have breakfast, we'll have some yogurt or muesli or juice or whatever, and it's really special. I really, really loved it. Recommend it.
Yeah. I love you that you shared about that, especially as a fire pit, a fire enjoying during the day and the morning, because so many of us associate fire with night and campfire at night and fire circle at night and evening and, roasting potatoes at night. I had the experience last winter to go camping with a group of moms from our homeschool co-op. And the thing that I walked away there from with in my heart and mind, and I go back there all the time and talk about it all the time, was we made a fire. We made all our food on the fire, and we were at around the fire pretty much all day long. We were in like an eco campground, a very small primitive area, just kind of closed in, and it was just us there, few of us, moms and kids. And the fire was the center, it was the heart and the hearth of our personal campground, of our space. And there was a mom, a woman tending that fire, putting food on and feeding kids all day. There was at least someone there, and it was just a rotation that just happened. Whether we were warming coffee, whether we were, putting burgers and vegetables and corn, and a lot of the kids kept on adding. They would just come and add logs or add wood or tend that fire. No matter what they were doing on the periphery, that space was the most inviting space, the center of everything. And I think that is so, so profound to all of us to think about as you tell that story, that fire can be for breakfast and all day long and anytime. Kids can come over and you can have, fireplace, and they can go off and play and they'll come back and tend the fire, and it just draws everyone in, and it's so primal, but it's also so healing and joyful. Yeah, we need to do that more often.
Yeah, in our Torah, fire also comes up in the form of the burning bush and the fire on Har Sinai when we're receiving the Torah. And it started to dawn on me as we've been talking today, because I always thought, it's kind of like, fire and, brimstone and fire and whatever. But really, when you think about those situations, fire provides, it opens up this kind of meditative portal, like I think it was Gila, you said it earlier, where it does induce this kind of meditative state, which is a liken to this ring of fire. And it's interesting that that's what Moshe experienced when Moshe was being called to lead this kind of earth-shattering moment. And this is, a fire that consumed that burned a bush but didn't consume it. So it wasn't an out of control fire. It wasn't raging and crazy. It was a very controlled, non-destructive fire. And so if we're looking at Chama, those two ideas, it was warmth. It was the warmth and meditative and all of the gentleness that fire can bring, that really the Torah is describing with regards to Moshe. And also in getting the Torah, those moments of realization, Hashem is sending us fire. Something to think about. Any other thoughts?
Can I share a little something here that I learned from Rabbi Schneerson's book, The Toward a Meaningful Life, where he talks about the fire of youth?
Sure.
If it's okay. Yeah, it talks about he says a young person is like fire with direction and guidance. He or she can change the very shape of the world. Without direction, the fires of youth are wasted at best, while at worst they can become a dangerous, destructive force. To lead a meaningful life means harnessing the fires of youth. To do so, we must first understand the purpose of youth itself. So he goes on to talk about the older people in young people's lives, guiding we don't want to put their fire out, but they need to be guided. So I'll put my camera on. I just realized my camera's off. So this is something I've learned from this book over the years, Rabbi Schneerson's insights about the fire of youth.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm also,
Thank you.
we had talked about a little bit about having older children date. And when you were talking about that fire of youth and kind of harnessing it, I was thinking about that as well, because there's so much fire, especially when you're looking for your mate, this like desire, but also like intention, because you want to build a home and all of these things. And really, but not like, if you let that burn out of control, then you can make really bad decisions. But if you can really harness it and kind of have it in control, I think it would be very helpful in the dating process as well. Yefeh. Any other last minute thoughts? Chava, you look like you have one or two. We're all looking over the list
Yeah.
Yeah.
to make sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about, I think, even to hit the point home, what we said at the beginning about what Chava said about using the fire to fight fire. And I think maybe the one thing we didn't mention explicitly was the PTSD that's kind of all over the place right now. And that I think this was one of our inspirations when we decided to talk about this topic, was because I think everyone's like PTSD'd out after COVID, war, it's just been one thing after a crazy another. And really, I've spent an hour holding these candles, and it's just it is centering. You know, you think it's ephemeral, but it's also very earthy. It's like fire is rooted in each. We've talked about the elements
Grounding,
before. Hmm.
very grounding, very
Hmm.
grounding. Yeah.
So a helpful antidote to PTSD.
We also have the prohibition in our Torah of kindling fire on Shabbat. And it specifically says fire. And so many people, in our minds think, oh, they used fire to make food or heat food. But essentially, fire was integral to making things and everything, warming, heating, making things, sitting around the fire, not just heating food. So, therefore, it is specifically no kindling of fire. It's the one day that there was no fire in the center of the community. And I think that that is such a huge concept when we can wrap our heads around that concept. I take the analogy of going camping and having that fire that was central. And if we can think of tribes living out and having their central fires and having a day that there is no fire. And so I think it's pretty profound and deep, when you try to imagine that scenario as opposed to just a flame on a stovetop that you just, for making food. It's so much more.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was holding up my necklace while you were talking because the metal smithing, of needing fire, soldering metals, things like that, that we carry with us the energy of fire in our jewelry, and in so many different things. Um, it's something to meditate on and think about.
Yeah.
Mhm. Any last words, Kava?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Great. Okay, go enjoy your fire, y'all,
And make
and have a
candles. Make candles out of beeswax.
yeah,
Yes.
that's what this is. This is a beeswax candle that we put essential oils into, but also I'm kind of watching this piece of clove, because it's close to the wick, so I'm I'm waiting for it to explode or something. But yeah, be careful when you put whole herbs inside because they can pop. Um, but it's really pure. I had this other candle here and it's synthetic fragrance and you feel it. And here this is totally pure, like it's healthy to breathe it in. It's totally pure, amazing. Not only beeswax, but olive oil, different kinds of oil.
Resin.
Yeah. You can, there was that really cool thing going around that we ended up doing, which was using the pith of an orange as a wick and filling up like an orange, take half an orange peel with oil. We did that. There's fun ways, and then you get like all the smells of the orange or whatever it is. Having simmering herbs on a fire on the stove to, you know, create a warm and welcoming environment, or do what they did in the kibbutzim a generation ago in Israel, which is they would put eucalyptus leaves on a fire and have them on a rolling boil to stave off colds and flus for the kids. I learned that from a grandmother now, but she was in a children's house growing up. So enjoy your fire, everyone. Thanks for coming. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.